Good afternoon. Hey, Mom. How are you? So, this is the afternoon pick me up. Uh, Basically, we're going to have a quick topic that we're going to talk about this afternoon. The topic is entitled, How Many Coats Do You Have On? Sister Gibson, how are you doing this afternoon? How many coats do you have on? That is the question for this afternoon. How many coats do you have on? In the wintertime is a lot different from summertime, obviously, right? Summertime, we wear less layers, we have on less clothing because it's more hot, right? And the wintertime, we put on more layers because it's more cold. You know, we have layers on top of layers on top of layers because we're freezing, we're cold. That's the whole point. That's the purpose. That's the reason why we have layers. You know, um, oftentimes, especially in the wintertime, I usually wear a jacket, and then I wear a coat, and then I wear a hoodie. Because I hate cold. I hate feeling cold. I hate experiencing the cold. I hate cold. Worst feeling. But when we're talking about layers this afternoon, we're talking about how many coats do you have on. If you know anything about painting, you know anything about painting. Painting is a task that takes a lot of your time, right? If you're going to paint a wall a certain color, you say you want to paint the wall in your house a certain color, and you take the paint, you buy the paint and everything like that, you dump it in, you put your little roller in, you boom, 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 you do your wall. You feel as though one coat is going to be enough to cover that wall. You're absolutely wrong. If you are painting, if you're a painter, you have to use more coats to put onto your wall. Because if you have less coats on your wall, you're going to start to see the residue on the other side. You're going to start to see the previous color peek through. So that's why you need multiple colors. You need more colors in order to cover it up. That's the whole point of coats. Now, when you look at coats from a spiritual perspective, it's a little bit different because now you need more coats to cover what's there. And when you're putting different coats on, you're covering up what's there. And if you don't do it properly, those coats that you put on to try to mask and to hide what's there can easily be peeled off. I'm going to give you guys a lesson today in how to paint, how to properly paint your wall, and in turn, how to properly put on coats that will cover up the nastiness that was once where you were. So before we get into that, let's pray. Father God, we just want to thank you again for your love and your mercy. Thank you, Lord, for hearing us, for listening to us. We ask you, Lord, that as we continue to look to you, dear Father, we ask you, Lord, to continue to give us strength, wisdom, and understanding. Bless us and keep us, dear Lord, I pray in Christ's name. Amen. All right. Now, like I said, Fluffy, how you doing today? Texas. How you doing? Texas Turbo, CB. Texas Turbo. I like that. It's a pretty dope name. Good to see you. Now, whenever you're painting a wall, you have your bare wall in front of you, right? Let's say that wall has paint on top of it already. See, when someone else may have painted over what was there before, perhaps there was wallpaper under there before, and someone said, I don't feel like taking up the wallpaper, removing the glue off of the wall. I'm just going to paint over the wallpaper, and that's going to be the room. Besides, the guest room doesn't matter. And as that person moves out of the house, that guest room then becomes someone else's house, and it begins to be someone else's room. And now they say, well, I don't like the color that they put up in here, so I'm going to put a different color up in here. So then you try to paint over what was already there. Instead of going down deeper to remove what was there, you put coats over the layers. By putting coats over layers, you're temporarily masking what is already there. If you have a bad attitude, if you have hateful thoughts, if you have a dirty mind, you can only paint and cover it for so long. After a while, that paint is going to start to chip. After a while, that paint is going to start to bleed through. And the other side of that wall is going to show itself. No matter how good you think you painted it, how good you think you masked it, how good you think you covered it, you didn't do anything. Because guess what? You can see the paint starting to lift up underneath. See, there's a process that one must take in order to put proper coating over yourself, over your rooms, over your home. See, my father used to always paint. He painted a lot of stuff in the house. And because of the fact my father wasn't a professional, he learned while he did. And guess who learned right beside him? Me. So I learned what it meant and what it took to actually paint. See, sometimes when you move into a new apartment, you're fortunate to have walls that are already primered. So you need a primer to put over your wall. That's the first thing you need. Now, by putting a primer over your wall, you're actually covering and you're resetting your wall to its original state. That's why you put primer over a wall. See, if you have paint that's already there, you can't put heavier paint on top of paint because what's going to happen is going to start to crack and it's going to start to lift up. And when it starts to crack and lift up, then all of a sudden, you're going to see the other side of it and it's going to look nasty. Bible talks about covers in different ways, right? Bible says, we read here in, just had it. Just had it. We'll come back to it. When you have different layers, you have to start from scratch. So before you start to paint over and cover over the layers that's already there, you have to start to chip away at it. See, you have to allow yourself to get chipped away. And God has to be the one to chip away what's already there. Maybe you have years and years of lying on top of you. Maybe you have years of sexual immorality. Maybe you have years of alcoholism. Maybe you have years of drug abuse. Maybe you have all those things that's piling on top of your wall and making your wall heavy. And all you have to start doing is having it scraped off. As you start to scrape off those layers of paint, you start to see the wood that was underneath it before. You start to see the wall that was underneath it before. And as you continue to chip away at it, as you continue to scrape away at it, you start to notice that, all right, well, I'm starting to see what was there before. I'm starting to see the person I used to be. I started to see the person I once was before I got involved with that person, before I got involved with those people, before I got involved with those gangs, before I got involved with those type of behaviors. I'm starting to see the person I used to be. And as I continue to scrape away at the wall, I'm starting to notice something, that everything that I once had was already there. All the confidence that I used to have is still there. All the good things that I used to remember are still there. And it's not like I forgot any of these things. I was just having too many layers and coverings over me that I forgot these things. Now everything starts to scrape away and everything starts to fall off. And by the time you realize it, you're looking at a bare wall. And when you look down, you see layers on top of layers on top of layers that we use to cover up some of our deceitfulness, some of our hardships, some of our disgusting attitudes. You start to see that. Now, as you see these things and as you discover these things for yourself, you then say, okay, well, now I want to cover. I want to be brand new. The Bible says here that in 2 Corinthians 5, verse 17, it says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation, for the old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. Now that all of the pieces of your wall has been shredded away and everything has been taken off of your wall, the next step for you is to now start to put on your primer. You put on your primer because you have to start doing certain things to put this new primer on. See, you're painting this new primer up. This is not going to be the color of your wall, not at all. It's just going to protect you so that when you put your coats on, your coats will stay on. If you're putting on the coat of Christianity, it will stay on. It won't chip off over time because you're putting a strong primer underneath. See, Ephesians 4, verse 22 to 24 says, to put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires. That's what you just scraped off. And it says now in verse 23, and the renewal of the spirit and of your mind, and to put on the new self. Now you put on the new self, right? Now that you put on the new self, you're putting on a whole new coat. So you've scraped off the old layers that was hanging off and that was making your wall look nasty. You scraped off those old layers. And now that those old layers have fallen off, you don't need to worry about them because they're on your feet. They're underneath your toes. They're underneath your shoes. You don't have to look at it and reach down and try to put it back on that wall because you're starting fresh. See, that's the beautiful thing about life. That's the beautiful thing about the Christian life. You can start fresh. You don't have to hold on to the layers that was once covering you up. You don't have to hold on to the layers that was once stopping you from being happy. You don't have to hold on to those layers. You can scrape those layers off and you can worry about those layers no more. See, now that you remove those layers and now you have your bare wall, you put your primer up. So your primer is going to be the renewal of your spirit, of your mind, and to put on the new self. Now, once you start to put on that primer and the primers on the walls and everything like that, then you can choose what kind of coating you want to put on. So you put on the coating, you do one layer. See, but one layer is not enough. See, some people believe that they could just go to church and that's the only layer that they need, and that's not the only layer you need. You need a little bit more layers, right? Now, the second layer that you're going to put on is Bible study. Actually studying the Bible, studying the Word, studying God for yourself, looking for God for yourself, not listening to a pastor or listening to a teacher teach about God, but to look for God yourself. That's the second layer. The third layer is the best layer of all because the third layer actually covers over every blemish that is there from the other two layers. See, the two layers are not going to cover every inch of the wall. The two layers are not going to cover every speck of the wall. So you have to make sure that the layers that you're going to put on, the third layer, is going to cover everything. And that layer that you're going to use to cover everything is going to be your experience with God. When you have that experience with God, that's when you start to understand and when you start to realize the covering that you once had that you're now using. See, the covering is now gone and it's disappeared. You're now using a new covering. Wanda King, how you doing today? How you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you. Sheila, good to see you. You start to see a new covering because the wall is now almost perfect. You remove the old layers off, you put on a new layer. And that new layer starts from accepting Christ. The second layer is Bible study. The third layer is experiencing God. Once you start to experience God, that third layer covers up that wall that was once there, that was once in bad shape. I'm doing well, Wanda. Glad you're doing good. You start to realize how important it is for us to see the true layers that lie within. Understand that over time, your wall is going to continue to put on new coverings. And as you put on new coverings, you're not going to see things the same. Because as you put on more coats onto a wall that hasn't been scraped off or primered, those coats are going to start to weigh heavy. And over time, it's going to start to crack. And as it starts to crack, you're going to start to see the wall that was underneath. And if that wall wasn't anything pleasant underneath, it's going to be exposed and people are going to see those coverings. That's when you have to realize that you have to scrape it all off. You got to remove all your coverings, all your masks, everything that you have that's hiding your face, that's hiding who you are. You have to scrape those things down. Because if you want to be the new person, you have to scrape off the old self. You got to remove the old self and you have to put up the new self. The verse of focus was Ephesians 4, verse 22 to 24. To put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life, is corrupt through deceitful desires, and the new renewal of your spirit and of your mind, to put on the new self, creates after the likeness of God, is truly righteousness and holiness. Be humble. How you doing, bro? This afternoon has been about how many coats do you have on? And that's a question one must ask themselves. How many coats do you have on? The answer should be 3 coats. That's the amount of coats should be added to a wall in order for that paint to resonate through and to look good. But if you don't have that, you don't put those coats on the wall as you should. If you keep painting over the wall because you don't like the color, you don't like how you start to look, you paint over it to hide it. It looks good for a little bit. Then you start to see the cracks again. Then you paint over it again. It looks good for a little bit. Then you start to see the cracks again. Oh, you paint some more over it. It looks good. But then what happens? Start to see the cracks again. I hope, I hope you see those cracks before it starts to get worse. You scrape off everything. You throw on that primer. And you paint 3 coats. Accepting Christ, reading the Bible, and experiencing that. Let's do a roll call. Over here on my Facebook page, Monique, good to see you. Alfonso, blessings, bro. Haven't seen you in a minute, man. Good to see you, bro. David, my brother, good to see you, man. Hope you're safe out there. Kimberly, good to see you. Alethea, good to see you. Enchantress, that's all you could do is scrape. Takes time. Takes time. Painting doesn't take a day. Unless you have professionals and a whole bunch of people working on the same wall, it takes some time. It's all good. Enchantress, good to see you this afternoon. Be humble, good to see you. Wanda King, how you doing? Good to see you. Robbie, good to see you, man. Have faith in it. Blessings, good to see you. Sheila, good to see you this afternoon. Make sure I got everybody. If I miss anybody in live me, I do apologize for that. Over here in Close Ministry, Sister Gibson, from Marisol. Blessings. Good to see you guys this afternoon. Let's pray. Father God, we just want to thank you, Lord, for hearing us and listening to us. Father God, help us to remove the layers that need to be removed, dear Father, to scrape away the layers that need to be scraped away. And help us to put up the coats, dear Father God, that will reflect you. Lord, we ask you to continue to strengthen us and love us, dear Lord, each and every day. Help us to grow, help us to learn, help us to understand you. Father God, Lord, we love you and we thank you. Bless us and keep us now, I pray in Christ's name. Amen. Amen. All right, folks. You guys have a continued blessed day. Continue to be safe today. Stay cool. It's hot outside. It's hot inside. It's hot everywhere. I love it. So take care, y'all. Be blessed.